So a couple days ago I had a buddy drop this off to me. It's in pretty rough shape, as you can see. The headstock is entirely broken off of it. A little bit dusty, a little bit scuffed up. Definitely could use some TLC. You know, I already started off by gluing down some of the cracks that are on that headstock, but we're gonna definitely get that attached. We're gonna clean up this fretboard. I might screw around and do a little bit of abalone inlay on the fretboard. We'll see. Thankfully, when the break did occur, it was a really, really clean break, so it shouldn't actually be too hard to attach back together. For all intents and purposes, I am definitely just going to go ahead and use this Tight Bond Original. From what I've found online, it's a pretty good solution for this kind of stuff. Alright, so step 2 is going to be coating the back of this headstock as well as the rough patch of the neck in glue. Paying very close attention to detail not to get any wood glue in this truss rod hole. Person who tried repairing this before got so much in there, and that was honestly my most daunting task of this repair thus far, was just digging all that crap out of there so I could have a functional truss rod with this guitar. But we are there, and let's get into it. Gotta get a small paintbrush so that we're laying down only as much glue as we need. Actually got a nice little artist's brush with pretty firm bristles, so that will help with some precise application on this thing. Just gonna dab it in there. Make sure we don't have tons of excess. Just start painting it on there. Like I said, just trying to get only as much glue as we need. Definitely not going to be extremely conservative with this glue, but I don't want to be too overboard with it either. But we want to make sure it is covering every surface. A little bit to fill in some of these gaps here. But we don't want a sloppy mess either. And if you go outside of the lines here and you paint some of the actual guitar with this glue, don't worry about it. You can use a wet washcloth or something to get it off before it dries. But you want to make sure you wipe it off before it dries, because otherwise you're probably going to have to sand that. Okay, that looks like just about enough. Time to start on this headstock. Like I said, make sure to have a damp shop cloth handy for any mistakes that are made. For this particular clamping method, I'm going to use 2 because right here in the corner doesn't fit super well. The rest of it fits in the exact original position that it needs to, but then there's just one that kind of bowed out a little bit. So let's try to get that all totally exactly back into place where we need it. Don't want to put the full amount of pressure on that first clamp until we have got it squared away with the second one as well. Both clamps are on. All excess glue has been wiped down for the most part. one in the truss rod hole. Alright, so with all that excess wood glue wiped off, 2 clamps set down, totally in place, I would say that that is looking like a guitar again. And we are well on our way to actually making this a successful repair. Alright, so here we are about 3 days later. Wanted to give it as much time as I could to let it dry. But this headstock is on there pretty solidly. You know, you can see I can jiggle it. It flexes a little bit when I do that, but we're gonna add a little bit of extra something or another here to get that going. As you can see, it's a pretty clean break in the back. There's a couple deep gouges that need to be worked out and filled in. Go ahead and sand that and paint it all to match. Probably just do a black headstock that I'll just do maybe like a little triangle point to transition it pretty well into that red neck. And as you can see, that nut is probably not going to fit in there super well. So we're going to have to get a file after we put some wood putty in there and make sure that's totally level before we set that nut in there. Alright, the next step in stabilizing this neck, this glue is fairly stable already, but there's a slight flex to it. I'm sure that's relatively normal. Still makes me uneasy, and I'm just trying to future-proof here. So I've seen a couple other people use basically dowel pins, just 1/4-inch dowel pins, wherever you can get some good surface coverage on that break. I'm choosing to do it right here on each end of this truss rod slot, just because if I go up any further, it's going to miss the break entirely, and it's just going to be entirely useless to do anyway. So. Okay, goes nothing. So now we got this this 1/4-inch dowel rod made of solid oak. When you're doing stuff like this, you want to make sure that you have a hardwood dowel because softwood is just not going to do the job. And we want to make sure that that is going in there nice and tight. Looks like it is. Alright, so time to cut our dowel pins. So, as you can see, that's where the 2 dowel pins came out the back. Pretty clean. There's just a little bit of gap in the sides here. We just got to fill in with some wood filler on the sanding, but that's fine. That should have pinned that together pretty well. Let's turn that around. So, as you can see, they got a little bit gnarled up at the top because of my twisting and stuff like that. Okay, so I think at this point, I can go ahead and get rid of these with my coping saw. Yeah, right here at this point, just needs to be sanded and cleaned up a little bit. Alright, now I'm just going to clean up this surface down here. I taped it off so that only the affected surface and just a little above it is getting sanded. That way the rest of this headstock can stay nice and clean and in its original formatting. So here we go. And again, I've taped off the neck. on the back in a triangular pattern, and we're just going to go ahead and sand this down before we putty anything. Alright, so now that we have sanded the neck and we're pretty much level with most of the surfaces, we know exactly where we need to fill in with our putty. So for the putty for this filling, I have gone ahead and gotten some Bondo wood filler. I've seen a lot of people use Bondo auto body filler. I don't really feel comfortable using that on something that's, you know, wood. So I figured I would use wood filler made by the same company. I really haven't seen very many reviews of people using this for luthier related things or guitar repair or anything of that sort. So we'll see how this goes. I figure if normal Bondo works just fine for most people, then wood filler Bondo will be just fine. Yet again, trial and error, we'll see here. I'm also not going to film this section of it just because I've never done this before and I feel as though filming might decrease productivity. So I'll check back in here in a few seconds once I'm finished. Alright, so wood putty has been applied. I'm pretty sure it's hard enough to sand already. If you see here, it says sandable in 15 minutes on the package, so it's been about 25. You know, I already got rid of a ton of that crap, and I'm thinking, you know, that it says to use 80 grit sandpaper, but I'm just gonna go ahead and use some more 150 and see how much of this I can clean up. Wow, I can already say that after that sanding process, I am very impressed with this product. That's about as hard as JB Weld, and that only took like 20-some minutes to set up that hard. Wow! I think that this is going to hold up really well. That filled in all those little nooks and crannies that blew out during the break, and fixed the little gaps in the back of my dowel pins, so yeah, let's just finish sanding this all up, and yeah, and then we'll figure out what to do from there paint-wise. Okay, so I'm back after sanding and filling in everything with wood putty here. We have got a super smooth finished product here. After I paint this, I really don't think that you're going to be able to feel this crack. There's a few rough spots in it right now, but I think that's going to get covered up by the paint for sure. There's some really nasty blowouts and chips right here in this nut channel. So I had to fill that in with some wood putty as well. It's super uneven at the moment, but at least it's filled in to the point where I can just file this down once I get the nut. But at least there's no chips or blowouts here anymore. These two dowel pins are also sitting totally flush with the surface of the headstock, so those should paint over just fine. I've gone ahead and I've sanded down the sides and left these uncovered by painter's tape. So the only tape that I have is here at the back stock going in a sharp V form so that we can get kind of a smoother transition from the headstock back into the neck once we paint this black. We also have that similar triangular pattern right here, also to just give it a nice smooth transition. I mean, it's going to be a sharp point, but that's about the smoothest as I can get it with my skills. Alright, so as you can see, I have covered the entire body with a really crappy t-shirt. Got this neck taped off, front and back, right up to the fretboard at these spots up here. I'm also using Krylon Cover Max to get this job done. Also made sure to cover up the truss rod before painting. Alright, so after about like 7 coats, that is just looking excellent. I'm sure it'll come through a little bit through the camera, but you can sort of still see the crack on the backside. And you can still see some of the sanding marks on the front, but all in all, man, I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, that paint job ended up turning out just about as well as it could. You can still see the dowel rods. If I could go back, I would have put putty over those and smoothed it out so the porous surface was covered up. But yeah, there's still some like chips and stuff around the neck, but at least it's a playable instrument now. Here's the back of the neck. Did a pretty good job cleaning that up, I think. So some more of the parts for this build came, and I'm a little impatient. I don't want to wait till they've all arrived, so I'm just going to dive right into this thing. So yeah, we're going to take off these cover plates and add some gold pickup covers to these. So I've got you under the magnifying glass here, and let's just go right into it. Okay, so now that we got our first pickup all taken apart, put on this first cover. You want to make sure that these holes align with kind of what looks to be flathead screws. These are the magnetic parts that I guess pick up the frequency. I really don't know the science behind pickups, but I know that's where these are supposed to go. So. So yeah, these covers are a little cheaply made. As you can see, they don't line up with all of those perfectly, and it's flexing a little bit on each side, but that should be just fine. Okay, so then once it looks as even as you want it on each end, we can go ahead and mount that back to the guitar. Alright, got it all installed and cleaned up. Looking much better. Sitting actually level to the other one. Well, yeah, let's move on to the pick guard. Alright, so even just kind of like trying to place it on there. Fits totally flush around the first pickup, but there's just like a little lip hanging off here. So we're going to take the Dremel to that, just shave that down a few centimeters. Alright, now it's actually sitting totally flush in between each pickup, and I just gotta put this little kickstand on here and mount that screw up top. Alright. Pick guard has been attached. And this thing is starting to look really slick. At this point, we're just waiting for the tuning pegs to come in, and I gotta go buy a nut because the one that I had is a little bit too small. Probably gonna end up buying a blank nut from the local music shop and just kind of carving it myself. Once those two pieces come into play, I'm just gonna go ahead and set the intonation. Once we can confirm that it'll stay in tune and the action will stay exactly in place, then we're gonna pass this off to its final home. So in order to get this nut carved perfectly, we need to get the strings put on just so we know where they will sit in that nut, and we'll just basically mark it with pencil from then on out. To be honest, I'm probably not going to show a ton of this process just because I think it's going to limit my efficiency, but I'll try to take step-by-step videos as I go. Alright, I had to come inside because it was way too hot in the garage. I got this nut carving process going. Basically, I already have all of the notches cut just ever so slightly, just so these strings are sitting in place. I'd say string spacing is just about perfect. The nut still needs to come a little bit this way in order for the strings to be perfect, but now that I've got exactly where the strings need to lie, I can actually get to the shaping and carving process. First step is basically just shaving off the sides with a hacksaw, and once I get there, I'm going to be using this file set, a half round file, and just gonna start chipping away at it. Alright, so we've got kind of a rough outline drawn on this guy. Sides have been shaved down. Now we're just gonna kind of go along this general outline, and if it needs adjusting, we'll just kind of do that as we go. Alright, I'm about like 30-ish minutes into this process. And it's definitely starting to look like this nut should. Just gonna keep lowering these strings closer to the fretboard, and just kind of clean up those sides afterwards. Alright, so I've got all those string carvings perfect at this point. Sides are shaved down exactly where they need to be. Now I just need to carve it sloping right off the front so that it kind of guides the strings a little bit closer to the headstock. And after I carve that little slope, then we're just going to polish that up with some high grit sandpaper and glue it in place, and then we'll get our intonation set right. And we'll be one step closer. Alright, intonation is set just about as good as it can get. It is all strung up and in tune. It is pretty much finalized. It's going to be handed off to its owner and be played and loved and cherished. Just to show you that it works, I'll give you a bit of a demonstration here.